The College of Cardinals have gathered. The process to elect a new leader of the Catholic Church has begun. Good afternoon. A centuries-old ritual is now underway to elect a successor to Pope Francis.
All eyes will be on a chimney at the Vatican that will signal whether or not a new leader of the Catholic Church has been chosen. CTV's Adrian Gabriel joins us live now from Vatican City. Adrian, this is a big moment in history. Explain for us how events will unfold today inside the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah, well, day one of the conclave is officially underway. Just moments ago, we saw the doors of the Sistine Chapel close. 133 cardinals, 4 of which are Canadian, are now locked inside as the first vote of this conclave begins. Now, on day one of the conclave, we only have one vote. We're not expecting a pope to be chosen today, though theoretically anything is possible. Though what will likely come of today is that for those cardinals inside, they will get an idea of who some of the front runners are. There'll be some votes that are nods to certain cardinals out of respect. I'm also joined right now by Vatican correspondent Julian Paparella. Julian's a Canadian. You've lived here in Rome, covered the Vatican closely. Right now, in this very moment, the cardinals are inside the Sistine Chapel. Take us through their process right now and the responsibility that now rests on their shoulders.
Yeah, so we're right behind us here is the Sistine Chapel. These 133 cardinals, as you mentioned, are gathered. They've been in Rome, most of them since the funeral of Pope Francis. They've had meetings on a daily basis to discuss key issues of importance in the life of the Church today. And now they're tasked, as you said, with that first ballot, a secret ballot. They've entered into the Sistine Chapel. The doors have been closed. It's a time of prayer. It's a time of reflection. They've invoked the Holy Spirit, the Litany of the Saints. This is really an important moment. It's a daunting task. Most of them will only ever be involved in one conclave in the course of their lifetime, maybe 2 or so. But this is really something that's a momentous moment for each of them, and also a historic time for the Church and for the world.
And for the next pope, the future pope, you know, on this very day, we're seeing a conflict beginning between India and Pakistan. We have the war ongoing in Ukraine. We have the conflict between, in Gaza right now taking place. The Pope will be the figurehead of the Catholic Church, but what about the moral compass for the rest of the world? What will the job that they will have to endure?
The Pope is certainly the shepherd, the leader of the world's over 1 billion Catholics, but as we saw with Pope Francis, it's also a world leader. It's someone that's a sign of hope, of peace, of unity. We remember in Canada, Pope Francis came to walk with Indigenous peoples for truth and reconciliation. He mentioned on countless occasions the need for peace in Ukraine and more recently in the Holy Land, in Israel and Palestine. These are places that are near and dear to his heart. He would actually do a video chat every night with the Catholic parish in Gaza. And one of his final wishes was that his Pope Mobile be sent to Gaza to be transformed into a mobile health unit. So Pope Francis was really a pope who was close to people, close to the suffering of people, and I think that's really something that the cardinals are also looking for in his successor. On the last day of their meetings, just earlier this week, before starting this conclave behind closed doors, they sent a message out to the world, to other world leaders, to all peoples, asking them to work for peace and invoking that peace upon this process as we look to a new leader for the Church, but also a leader for the world.
And the process is now underway. Julian Paparella, thank you so much for joining us. And as we enter these hours, we're probably about 2 hours away, roughly, from seeing whether it's black smoke or white smoke rising from the chimney of the Sistine Chapel. It's quite interesting. In this digital age, many of us are looking skyward, waiting for a puff of holy smoke to signal what the future may hold. Michelle.
CTV's Adrian Gabriel live for us in Vatican City. Really appreciate it. Look forward to more of your reporting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Catholics around the world are keeping a close eye on the Vatican this morning, including the faithful here in Toronto. CTV's Mike Walker is live outside St. Michael's Cathedral with local reaction. Mike.
Well, Nathan, this is a big day, a significant moment for Catholics here in Toronto. Many are gathering at St. Michael's Cathedral right now for afternoon Mass, where they tell us they will be praying for the cardinals and are hoping the next Pope will continue the legacy of Pope Francis. As the faithful gather to pray at St. Michael's Cathedral, anticipation is in the air. The process to elect the next pontiff now underway.
Whoever is coming in needs to be truly the successor of St. Peter, not necessarily the successor of St. Francis. So if he does something different, that's fine.
133 cardinals are tasked with electing the next leader of the Catholic Church, among them the Archbishop of Toronto, Cardinal Frank Leo, and his predecessor, retired Cardinal Thomas Collins.
It's a really prayerful moment for them. Cardinal Leo sent a note back to the Catholic community in the Archdiocese of Toronto and said, please pray for us. This is a huge a moment in the life of the Church, the election of the faithful shepherd, the global shepherd of more than 1 billion Catholics around the world.
Pope Francis was widely known for his progressive stance on a range of issues. Some Toronto Catholics are hoping the next pontiff will follow in the late Pope's footsteps.
Issues of the acceptance of the Church regarding with the LGBTQ people, I believe that it's the inclusiveness of the Church at this time. The Church is evolving.
Well, he will be a little bit more open and more because of the society now is different than before.
And Neil McCarthy with the Archdiocese of Toronto points out that previous conclaves in recent history have taken 2 or 3 days to elect the next pope, and Catholics here will be keeping a very close eye on what's happening at the Vatican. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. And still ahead on CTV News at noon, the Leafs are back in action tonight against the Florida Panthers. We have a preview of Game 2 coming up a little later in the newscast. But first, we have to take a look outside because we have beautiful sunshine and gorgeous temperatures to match. We are into a lovely stretch of spring weather. Let's bring in Lindsay Morrison for a look at the current conditions. Potential for a little unsettled weather, but not too much.
Just the slightest chance today, Michelle. I'm looking forward to no longer talking about that chance of showers because pretty soon we are entering a solid run of sun. As you can see, though, on the satellite and radar, we are still dealing with this area of low pressure that is taking its time exiting. We've got a cold front that's going to swing through later today, so maybe a shower late this afternoon, early this evening, or overnight. Not right now, though. It's lovely outside. Temperatures now in the 20s. Both on the Toronto Islands and at Pearson Airport. A little humid as well, so it feels warmer than that temperature suggests. Here's a look at what we're dealing with, and winds right now are starting to come out of the north. We're going to feel that a little bit more as the day goes on, but it's going to be a good one. Get outside, enjoy. Forecast daytime high 22. We'll talk about just how mild it could get in the long-range forecast coming up. For now, though, Nathan, I'll send it over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Prime Minister Mark Carney will be hosting a call with the premiers today to talk about his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House. And CTV's Scott Hirsch joins me now with more on everybody's wondering what came out of that meeting, Scott.
Nathan, Mark Carney himself striking a positive tone, speaking to reporters from the Canadian Embassy after he left the White House yesterday after that high-stakes meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, saying the two leaders are now fully engaged, and that is a stark difference from the relationship that U.S. President Donald Trump had with previous Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and Donald Trump musing about that rocky relationship yesterday as well as he was sitting next to current Prime Minister, of course, Mark Carney. And Carney, at the very least, seemed to avoid some of the triggers other world leaders have fallen victim to sitting next to the U.S. president. Notably, we all remember the infamous Zelensky meeting in the Oval Office. So despite signs of a positive first step and a reset of the relationship and plans for meetings ahead between high-ranking officials and another face-to-face meeting at the G7 in Kananaskis, Alberta, there's still no resolution to the lingering trade war, and the U.S. president was asked specifically yesterday, was there anything Mark Carney could have said or done that could have had tariffs lifted immediately? And the U.S. president said no. Here's more from Donald Trump, however, on what he thought of the meeting and the relationship with Mark Carney moving ahead after the Canadian Prime Minister left the White House.
The new Prime Minister is a terrific guy, and we had a very long session with JD and Marco and everybody, and it went very well. No, we had a very great meeting, and no tension. We want to do what's right for our respective peoples, and that's what's going to happen.
You heard the U.S. president there say no tension. There were a few issues where Mark Carney, a few times, where he did push back, particularly on the 51st state comments that we've heard often from the U.S. president, using a real estate analogy here. Some things are not for sale. He said Canada is not for sale, making it relatable to the U.S. president. And that, of course, is a point of contention. However, the U.S. president didn't seem to focus on that during the meeting as he was sitting next to the prime minister, but did make a comment later saying never say never. Will the U.S. president drop this rhetoric of the 51st state? Unlikely and very unpredictable coming from the U.S. president, but at least in this meeting, there was quite a tone of respect between the two, and at the very least appears to be a beginning to reset of the relationship moving ahead, so that maybe the two leaders can then focus specifically on the issues that will have to be dealt with in the ongoing trade war.
All right, we're going to find out. The Prime Minister, by the way, now meeting with premiers. CTV's Scott Hurst reporting from our national newsroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
Let's talk more about this. The Prime Minister are going to be speaking with the premiers today to talk about that big meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House yesterday.
CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris has more on what to expect from that premiers meeting.
It's not for sale, won't be for sale ever.
Ontario's premier encouraged by what he saw play out in the Oval Office.
I thought it was a warm greeting, and I'm very confident that the Prime Minister it's a good start to a long relationship.
Premiers are being briefed this afternoon by the Prime Minister on what he and President Donald Trump discussed, the path forward. On Doug Ford's agenda for this meeting,
The big national infrastructure projects, he's asked all the premiers to give him a list. We sent our list forward, and I believe in building pipelines as well.
A controversial inclusion on Ontario's infrastructure wish list is a proposed tunnel under Highway 401, something Mark Carney hasn't weighed in on.
Well, if he says no, we continue doing it because we need it. It's costing our economy tens of billions of dollars every single year.
Money lost in gridlock. While Ford is supportive of Alberta's push for more pipelines, when it comes to talk of that province leaving Canada,
I'm not for that whatsoever. We need to stay united. We're so much stronger when we're all sticking together.
Alberta's premier insists she and Ford have a great friendship, but
I don't tell him how he should run his province, and I would hope that he doesn't tell me how I should run mine.
Premier Ford spoke this morning with the U.S.'s ambassador to Canada. Ford says he stressed in that call a first step to building economies on both sides of the border is removing tariffs. At Queen's Park, Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
As the weather gets warmer, the city's launching a pilot program that will provide 500 air conditioning units to seniors and other vulnerable residents.
This is not just an appliance, not just an air conditioning unit. It makes sure the seniors or people living in these apartments can be safe, that they could actually enjoy the summer and not worried about being so hot. And sometimes it can even save lives.
Advocacy group Acorn says it's important to ensure broader access to air conditioners for those in need.
This initiative starts when we see members in our community that they were not able to go to the cooling centers because they don't have TTC means, isn't it? They don't have the money. It's a good news for people. It's an opportunity for people. It gives hope.
The city says the air conditioning pilot program will cost $200,000. You can access an application through the city's website, and a lottery will be held to determine who gets an AC unit.
Proposals for a new action plan on coyote concerns in 2 downtown neighborhoods have passed a hurdle at City Hall, and there's more to the framework than just warning signs.
The proposals will take aim at people who feed coyotes and also keep closer tabs on where they're being seen and what they're doing. But some downtown residents are skeptical. CTV's Beth Macdonell has the details.
For months, parks and sidewalks across Fort York and Liberty Village have become places dog owners, even young families, are afraid to roam.
We've witnessed a few attacks. I would say that it's, especially for young kids being in an open park, it's scary.
This air horn, one of the types of devices many are carrying for extra protection.
Ever since we've heard about them just being a bit more mindful and just like kind of keeping an eye over my shoulder and things like that.
Now the city has moved a step closer to creating a downtown coyote action plan to deal with the up to 4 problematic animals in the neighborhoods. It includes improving 311 reporting to include all types of coyote behavior, consulting on a possible reproductive control plan, reviewing increasing fines for feeding coyotes, and better business waste management, establishing a more pet-friendly approach to curbing interactions, and asking the province to share costs that have come out of clearing Ontario Place. Deputy Mayor Asma Malik says the coyote situation is the result of habitat destruction there.
This framework is badly needed. We have to be able to respond and keep our communities safe.
The Coyote Safety Coalition believes the city is not taking enough action to keep the community safe.
Let's start. Let's test. Let's have an experiment. Remove the coyotes. From the point when they're removed, measure how many new attacks there are, how many new deaths are there. Once they're removed, we now have a timeline where we can actually measure how long it takes for new coyote sightings to be reported to 311.
If we take that method that the city's planning to take, wait to see how this evolves, it's going to continue to escalate where a child or a human is hurt, and then the coyotes will be culled.
But not all dog owners are sure about the best way to move forward to deal with aggressive coyotes.
So far, the past few months have been pretty frustrating and scary, and my neighbors, I live right here, and like several of them have seen coyotes. They even follow them up into the condo.
Malik says the action plan will ensure protocols and resources for the city to respond to coyotes.
Beth Macdonell, CTV News.
In Ottawa, we're getting a clearer picture of the Conservative Party's post-election plans.
The Conservative caucus met yesterday for the first time since voters sent them back to Ottawa as the official opposition once again. At their meeting, Conservative caucus members voted in favor of adopting rules from the party's Reform Act. It would allow them to trigger a leadership review of Pierre Poilievre. Those same rules were used to oust former leader Erin O'Toole. But the vote doesn't mean a review of Poilievre's leadership is definitely going to happen. Despite losing his seat in the House of Commons, the leader's team is signaling he believes he has broad support to stay on in the role.
We have a leader of the party, and we expect that Mr. Carney will be true to his word. He has promised to call a by-election quickly so that Pierre can rejoin us in the House and lead us from the chamber. For the next few weeks, for procedural reasons, there are some things that require someone to do who has that seat in the House of Commons. I'll be taking, fulfilling those duties, but he's still the leader of the party.
Even if the Prime Minister calls a by-election as soon as legally possible, political analysts say it's likely Poilievre won't be back in the chamber until the fall sitting.
Tensions continue to escalate between India and Pakistan. India fired missiles into Pakistani-controlled territory earlier today as the death toll increased to 31 people in what Pakistan's leader called an act of war. India also claims there are casualties from Pakistani fire in the Indian-controlled portion of Kashmir. India said it struck infrastructure used by militants linked to last month's massacre of 26 tourists in the Indian-controlled portion of Kashmir. India has moved to punish Pakistan after accusing it of backing the attack, which Islamabad denies. Pakistan's defense minister warned there's a potential the conflict turns into full-fledged war.
Last night, they crossed the international boundary. We have working boundary, international boundary, and control line. So the other two are, they involve disputed territories. But crossing the international boundary, this is the clear-cut violation and invitation to expand the conflict, and maybe, convert it into something much more wider.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired a high-level meeting with senior cabinet ministers amid the conflict with Pakistan. He has yet to speak publicly about the situation. The Kashmir region has been split between India and Pakistan since 1949 and is claimed by both in its entirety.
Local health authorities in Gaza say dozens of Palestinians have been killed in Israeli airstrikes in Gaza City today. Those incidents included an Israeli strike on a restaurant and market and on a school building where families were taking shelter. There was no immediate comment from Israel, but that country has pledged to intensify its ongoing offensive in Gaza. It says it's pressuring Hamas militants to free hostages it took on October 7th. Israel says it won't take that step before a visit by the U.S. president next week, and there's potential for a ceasefire and hostage release deal. Hamas said it's insisting on a full ceasefire.
At least 2 people are dead after Russia launched a ballistic missile and a barrage of drones at Ukraine's capital overnight. 8 people were also wounded in the attack. Authorities say at least 1 ballistic missile and 28 Russian drones were recorded in Kyiv's airspace. Air Defense Forces shot down the missile and 11 drones. A 5-story building in the center of the capital was hit by drone debris, sparking a fire in several apartments where the victims were found. There's been no immediate comment from Moscow on the attack. And also in Ukraine, at least 4 people were hurt in a Russian drone attack on Zaporizhzhia. Officials say the drone sparked fires in the city, and residents reported hearing multiple explosions overnight. Children are said to be among those injured in the strike. Well, to sports, Leaf Nation is getting ready for Game 2 against the Florida Panthers tonight.
The team was on the ice for a morning skate ahead of the big game, and our Sean Leithong is live at Scotiabank Arena with more on the anticipation that is building. Sean, 2 in a row would be sweet.
It would be amazing, Michelle and Nathan, because the Leafs getting out to a 2-0 lead against the Florida Panthers, the Cup champion, is something that's almost unheard of, but it's something that could happen. What we do know about Game 2 so far is that the Leafs will have to do it without their starting goalie, Anthony Stolarz. He was not on the ice in the pregame skate. Joseph Woll will be getting the start for the Toronto Maple Leafs today. Now, we go back to Game 1 with some of the video we have here. Stolarz is believed to have been injured on a play where Sam Bennett from the Florida Panthers was skating out front of the net and made contact with Stolarz' head. Stolarz goes down, and a few minutes later came off the ice and was taken to hospital. We do know no official word on when he could possibly come back, or no official word on the injury itself. Now, with that having happened, all eyes were on the Leafs crease at the morning skate this morning. We saw that Joseph Woll was taking the starter's shots that usually the starter gets in the morning skate today. And then that focus becomes, what can Joseph Woll do for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Well, he was magnificent last year in the playoffs, winning games 5 and 6 against the Boston Bruins. But then also a lot of the talk with the team this morning was about what they can do to get revenge, if they want to get revenge on the Florida Panthers tonight. And here's what some of them had to say.
To win. I think that's how you get them. I think play the same way, physical, play their top guys hard, and at the end of the day, yeah, it's about winning.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got a lot of confidence in him. He's extremely focused, does all the right things, and it's not easy getting just thrown into the fire like that, but obviously tonight he'll be prepared and ready to go.
We got all the faith in him. He's always played tremendous hockey here for us over this season and his time here, so I know he's excited about getting the opportunity.
Now the question becomes, who's also the backup for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that will be Matt Murray, 2-time Cup champion. And if anyone's looking for the start time tonight, it's 1 hour earlier than Game 1. It will be starting at 7 o'clock. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leithong. Nathan, Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. And staying on the ice, the Professional Women's Hockey League playoffs begin today with the Toronto Scepters hosting the defending champion Minnesota Frost.
The Frost knocked the Scepters out in the semis last year. CTV's Rahim Ladani is live outside Coca-Cola Coliseum ahead of tonight's game, and the Scepters looking for some revenge.
Hey, Nathan and Michelle. Yeah, the Scepters certainly are looking for revenge. This was the playoff series fans were hoping for, and now they've got it. A rematch to last year's playoffs, and the Scepters are hoping to avenge last year's loss. You'll remember last season, the Scepters, they appeared to be in complete control. They finished the regular season in first place, and they had a 2-0 series lead against the Frost. However, then star Natalie Spooner suffered a season-ending torn anterior cruciate ligament in her left knee. After that, the Frost fought back to beat the Scepters, and they went on to win the inaugural Walter Cup. Now, that adversity the Scepters went through has carried through most of this season. They have been plagued with injuries, but Spooner is finally back, along with the healthy Sarah Nurse and Megan Carter, and the Scepters still managed to finish the regular season in second place. Tonight, the Scepters are hoping for another dominant start to the playoffs, but the team's general manager says the focus isn't on exacting revenge against Minnesota. Take a listen.
I think that's the storyline that a lot of people want us to say. It really isn't. This is a new team, a new season. Minnesota's a different looking team than they were last season as well. It's a new opportunity to test this particular team, in this season. So we worked pretty hard all season at getting our team ready for playoff hockey, and now we're up for the test. So it's a new challenge for us.
And that challenge will begin when the puck drops tonight at 7 o'clock in this best-of-5 series. For those who are planning to come down to the game, keep in mind that doors to the Coca-Cola Coliseum open at 5:45. Reporting live, I'm Raheem Ladani. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Raheem. And the weather is perfect. Inside Lindsay.
It is indeed, Michelle. I think Toronto fans, sports fans are going to be happy with the forecast for this evening. It's nice for a change not to talk about Maple Leaf Square and heavy rain. We do still have a chance of showers, especially early in the evening, perhaps just as fans are starting to gather at the square. But the rest of the evening is looking pretty good. There's 7 p.m. and 19 degrees. Overnight tonight, we are going to become a little bit cooler. 7 is our forecast low, thanks to a cold front swinging through and some northerly winds. Tomorrow will be cooler as well, but as far as the conditions are concerned, we're in for a nice run of sun beginning tomorrow afternoon and continuing into the weekend. We'll take a look at those details after this break here on CTV News at noon. Stay with us.
An iconic piece of footwear and its origin story are in the spotlight. The Bata Shoe Museum is opening a new exhibit today, looking at the history of the cowboy boot. CTV's Jessica Smith joins us live with more. Jess.
It is such a cool exhibit, Michelle, and there's so much rich history, and there's a lot of Canadian connections. I'm joined by Elizabeth with the Bata Shoe Museum, and I have to point out before we get started, her boots. These are just Canadian, absolutely fantastic. But talk to me about where we're standing. This is obviously a big deal. You're celebrating 30 years, and this exhibit has got so much history, and there's such a story to it that maybe a lot of people don't know.
So we're in the exhibition, Rough and Ready, a history of the cowboy boot, and we're in the first section, which looks at the real history. Who was the cowboy? And so a lot of at least another 10% were Indigenous, and also that when the cowboy boot first started, actually when cowboys first started, they just wore whatever boots they could get their hands on. But by the end of the 19th century, a cowboy boot starts to emerge, and that's what you have right here. So you can see that the heel's a little higher, and you can see that they start to use embroidery. Once the West is closed, then Hollywood transforms the cowboy.
You really do see that transformation, because we were talking about these original ones and how tight they were and how small they were, but they had a much different function to them. And then you think about, the Canadian connection with Stampede and things like that. You have a section that's got a bit of a nod to Stampede.
Yeah, this section sort of looks at the theme of rodeo, everything from rodeos to dude ranches to the Calgary Stampede. And so we have a pair from the 1920s. It came from the Glenbow, and it was worn by a woman in the Calgary Stampede Parade. And so there are lots of Canadian touch points here for sure.
And we have to talk about this kind of pop culture resurgence. We know fashion kind of goes in these cycles, and we've seen, Lil Nas X, we've seen Beyonce really kind of bring this back into the kind of pop forefront. How important was that to include that into this collection? Because I feel like there's just such a story when it comes to pop and the cowboy boot.
Well, even the idea of the singing cowboy, right? That goes all the way back to the 1930s when finally talkies were invented. And here, one of the things that we have on view are two boots actually worn by Gene Autry, the original singing cowboy. So when you think about Beyonce and you think about Lil Nas X and what they are doing, it's both a reclamation of the true history of who cowboys were, but it's also a reclamation of this musical tradition as well. They used cowboy costume in many ways to get their points across. And so the exhibition does end with some incredible boots.
So we're in the kind of opening days of this exhibit. How long is it going on for, and how long do people have to come and check out whether they want to see the classics or the pop version of the cowboy boot?
So the exhibition is actually up for 18 months. So We can accept a stampede of visitors right now, but also people do have a chance to see it for quite a while. So it will be up. And you can see, again, another Canadian touch point. We have Orville Peck's boots. So Orville Peck, right, Canadian rising star in the country music scene, and his boots were made by a woman. And so women have really moved into cowboy boot making. And we have a number of really incredible examples of some of these craftswomen who have taken over this tradition.
Well, Elizabeth, I am a fan of the cowboy boot. We're going to send things back inside to the station. I'll tip my imaginary hat. I left my cowboy hat at home. I have one, but I'll send it back inside to the station. Thank you.
You know, I got to get me some cowboy boots, especially today. Go for a nice walk, right?
It would be so nice for a walk. I bought boots at the Calgary Stampede last summer, and every morning in my closet, I look at them. Don't really know where to wear them. Now I know. The Battersea Museum, the cowboy boot exhibit.
Yeah, you should wear them tomorrow. We want to see them now. And it's true. Get out for a walk today, whether it's with your cowboy boots or not. Very spectacular conditions at this hour. Most of the afternoon is looking pleasant. We, yes, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, have the chance of a shower, especially late this afternoon and early evening. But after tonight and after tomorrow morning, things are looking pretty bright into the weekend. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers, you don't pay unless they win. A beauty shot of our city skyline from the CTV News chopper this morning. Gorgeous blue sky, gorgeous blue lake there, and winds today coming out of the north. Beautiful clearing's been happening all day long. Here's what it looks like on the satellite and radar. I do also want to start mentioning, of course, that as we make our way now into the second half of the spring season and into summer, do not forget the sunscreen, especially on days like this if you're going to be venturing out for a walk. You might find a little more cloud cover this hour in parts of Niagara region and around Oshawa, but right around the Golden Horseshoe, quite nice. There's that low that continues to bring wet weather to eastern sections of Ontario, including the city of Ottawa for today. Some wet weather around the Nickel Belt also. See this cold front? That's the one that's going to slice through southern Ontario today and send our temperature down for tonight and really for tomorrow as well. And here we see on the forecast radar that slight chance of a shower. Again, it's mainly the west end of the GTA in through Hamilton and then the Niagara Peninsula that is has the best chance of seeing some of that wet weather, but the potential's there for everyone. Let's just say that. Then overnight, we do see an increase in cloud cover. We'll likely be waking up to that. It doesn't last all that long. Nice clearing happens through the late morning into your Thursday afternoon. And then that sunshine is going to be sticking around through the day Friday and really through the weekend as well. Let's show you the temperatures. It's been quite mild the last couple of days in northern parts of Ontario, but now you've cooled right down in Timmins, or 2 degrees in Timmins, -3 in Moosonee, and only 5 in the Sudbury area. We're a little bit warmer here in southern Ontario. We're forecasting a daytime high of 22 in the city. Here's your overnight at a glance. 7 for the low, mainly cloudy skies, and yes, still that chance of a shower. Tomorrow's forecast daytime highs, a little cooler. By comparison, still in the double digits, still in the teens in many cases, but our seasonal average is now about 17 degrees. So it's a one-off cool day for tomorrow. Temperature is going to start to build again as we make our way into the weekend, and a nice surge of milder air arrives in time for the early part of next week. There's 25 degrees for your Monday. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves, though. 18 degrees for Friday, 21 for your Saturday. Wall-to-wall sunshine is expected. And at this point, Mother's Day is still looking very pleasant if you want to celebrate the moms in your life. 16 degrees, so a little bit of a cool down from Saturday into Sunday. But again, beautiful blue sky expected into Monday as well. Then it looks like some wet weather is going to return, not just for Tuesday, but perhaps into Wednesday also. That's the forecast for now. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. An alarming amount of dead fish are turning up at an Etobicoke park.
Those who live near Marie Curtis Park have been posting about the situation online. CTV's John Musselman investigates.
Dozens of small dead fish were spotted at the beach at Marie Curtis Park in Etobicoke. And this is just a small amount. It was much worse a few days ago. Posts on social media show thousands of dead fish here and at Humber Bay Park.
Oh, like hundreds, more than hundreds. 200, 300, 400, something like that.
We reached out to biology experts at the University of Toronto and with officials at the Ministry of Natural Resources to find out what's going on. Here's what we've learned. The fish are called alewife, a type of herring, a species that has spread throughout the Great Lakes through the Welland Canal. Experts say, quote, there are often die-offs of this species during the springtime. The fish is found deeper in the Great Lakes, including Lake Ontario, throughout the summer months, but it can be found closer to shore in the spring when they may be spawning. It has been hypothesized that the warming temperatures of the surface waters closer to shore may stress them and lead to these deaths.
The fish doesn't look too old. It must happen a day or two ago.
Officials with the Ministry of Natural Resources tell us large springtime mortality events are common with this species. The reasons include a weakened condition after a long cold winter, stress related to spawning, and rapid temperature changes common in nearshore areas of Lake Ontario. No other species of dead fish is visible on the beaches. Experts say there is no health concerns. Gulls will feed heavily on the dead fish, so will other wildlife like raccoons.
Any meat, shall we say, that's out at room temperature in the sun is obviously going to deteriorate, and then other bacteria can colonize it. So you don't want to be handling it. You don't want your pets to be handling it for those reasons. But the scavengers will do a nice job cleaning up.
Experts say the remainder of the dead fish will break down quickly, given they are so small. John Musselman, CTV News.
Coming up, there's been a sharp increase in couples seeking assisted living as more Canadians than ever are living into their 90s, and the supply for accommodations isn't keeping up with demand.
Between 2020 and 2023, Canada's population of people in their 90s rose by 175%. That amounts to more than 344,000 people.
That's led to soaring demand from couples seeking assisted living. CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan has the details.
83-year-old Jim West and his 78-year-old wife Gail have spent the best years of their lives together, building a home and raising a family. But 2 years ago, Gail's health and memory began to decline to the point where she needed constant assistance.
Over the past 5 years, Parkland has noticed a 500% increase in couples seeking assisted living.
I would say that our communities are typically about 40% couples now, especially in Ontario, and I would say that they want to age together.
We decided to try it with the one room, and then Gail got quite sick and was in the hospital for a while, and then when she came out from the hospital, she has on the care floor now because her condition is advanced quite a bit.
At this Ajax location, there are units for independent living, such as Jim has, and other levels of assistance, including secure floors for those with advanced dementia.
If they're walking down the hall by themselves, they can literally see something that is familiar to them, that they're going to know that this is their room. We have to address the needs of both of them at the same time, because while one might need a secure environment, the other one also needs that support, knowing that they're going to, even though they might want to be not want to be separated from their loved one, they know that if they're going to be, they're going to get the best care possible.
It allows me to spend as much time as I can with Gail. I have my meals with Gail on the 4th floor to keep her company.
Costs can run from $3,000 to $10,000 a month, depending on the level of care needed. But there are many activities offered: fitness, educational, recreational, and more. Jim says Gail loves music.
Even in fact, she got up and danced a couple of times. So it has improved her quite a bit.
And knowing Gail is doing well and the whole burden of her care is shared by others is allowing Jim to enjoy more of his golden years with her. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
As measles case counts continue to rise in this province, the opposition is asking whether Premier Ford should address the situation himself.
Measles cases in Ontario have increased by another 140 this week, just this week alone. And that's more than 200 the week before, a total of 1,383 cases right now confirmed in the province. This is worse than the case count in the entire United States. Just think about that. Why have we not heard anything from this Premier?
The Parliamentary Secretary for Health responded by highlighting the safety and efficacy of the measles vaccine. But his critics question whether the province is doing enough to stop the spread of the highly contagious and potentially deadly virus. The health minister says work is being done.
We have a public campaign right now focused on speaking to parents, to caregivers about the value and importance of vaccines, including, of course, measles. The most recent social media campaign is very much focused on measles. But again, the work that is happening at the public health unit, the work that is happening to ensure that they have sufficient vaccines and they know that they need to refocus their efforts, something that Dr. Moore sent over a year ago through a directive to all of those public health units, is important so that we get the coverage that we need to protect the general population.
The outbreak's been centered largely in the province's southwest, but there have also been warnings about potential exposures here in the GTA.
A test of Canada's national public alert system will be conducted this afternoon. Here in Ontario, you will likely hear that sound about 10 minutes from now at 12:55 p.m. Alert-ready messages will appear on phones, TV, and radio stations at different times across the rest of the country, except Quebec. The test is done every year to make sure the system works in the event of an emergency and, of course, to raise awareness.
Still to come, choosing to upgrade your flight could end up costing you thousands of dollars. So what if you pay and board the plane only to find out the upgrades you paid for are not available? Details after the break. When you book a flight, you usually get the base fare. So if you want to choose a seat, extra legroom, or an upgrade to business class, it'll cost you more.
Some of the upgrades can be very expensive. So what if you pay for them and you board the plane and they're not available? CTV's Pat Foran has this consumer alert.
When you board the plane, you're hoping you get what you're paid for, right?
Al Weisgerber of Port Dover and his wife flew to Barbados earlier this year to celebrate their 45th wedding anniversary. They booked a flight with WestJet, but when they got to the airport, they were surprised to be boarding a smaller Swoop airplane.
I turned around, I walked up, and I went to the window, and there it was right across it, Swoop. It says owned and operated by WestJet Airlines.
Weisgerber bought 2 tickets for just over $1,700, but paid a premium seating upgrade of $2,100 for a total of just over $3,800. But when they boarded the plane, there were no premium seats.
It was not enjoyable to fly down because we had paid that. Actually, it was like $1,050 going and $1,050 coming back for the premium seats, but it was just an ordinary plane. It was terrible.
When he got home, he contacted WestJet to ask for a refund for the premium seats they didn't use, and he was surprised at the response he received.
$100 each. And I emailed her back and I said, she says, that's the best we can do for you.
We are seeing a lot of airline misconduct when it comes to not refunding seat selection fees.
An air passenger rights group says airlines should automatically refund passengers when they don't get the seats they paid for without making them jump through hoops to be compensated.
The ultimate principle here is very simple. You don't have to pay for a service that you didn't receive.
When CTV News reached out to WestJet, a spokesperson said, "We are sincerely sorry WestJet did not live up to his expectations. Our support team has been in touch to determine a resolution." In the end, WestJet gave Weisgerber a $1,000 refund in the form of a credit, which was good enough for him.
Whatever we book, there's an automatic $1,000 sitting there for us, which was great. Thanks, CTV. We are really happy that you got our $1,000 back for us. We really appreciate it with helping us.
Pat Foran, CTV News.
New figures suggest there's been a slight decline in recent months in the number of passengers traveling through Pearson Airport. The latest operating report from the Greater Toronto Airports Authority shows the number of travelers passing through Pearson dropped by 2% in the first quarter of 2025. The GTAA says current global economic and political landscape are behind the decline, as well as extreme weather conditions. Also contributing to that figure, the airport had to shut down one runway for 5 days after the Delta plane crash in February. We've got more news right after the break. Stay with us. TIFF is preparing to celebrate its 50th anniversary at this year's festival, taking place September 4th through the 14th.
Now, organizers have announced a special series of summer screenings celebrating those 5 decades of film. Titled The TIFF Story in 50 Films, it will showcase the movies that have defined the festival's evolution over the last 5 decades, including global breakthrough hits like Slumdog Millionaire and Canadian classics, including Adam McGowan's 1984 directorial debut, Next of Kin. TIFF CEO Cameron Bailey says several selections are films TIFF championed early on, titles that connected with Toronto audiences before going on to achieve wider success. Screenings will run June 13th to August 27th at the Lightbox in Toronto.
And speaking of summer, it kind of feels like it today.
Sure does.
Yeah, a little early preview, if you will. And there's even warmer weather on the way in this 7-day forecast that we have, so we can look forward to that too. Right now, it's all about the sunshine, a bit of warmth, and yeah, some humidity as well. Here's a look at the satellite and radar. You can see where the rain continues at this hour, and that's around Kingston and Ottawa. For us, it's a chance of showers late this afternoon, early evening and overnight, waking up tomorrow morning. We're not so much worried about the chance of showers, but it is likely to be cloudy. That cloud cover is going to clear as the day goes on. Tomorrow is a cooler day, so not quite as summer-like the feel out there. 14 is our forecast daytime high. That is cooler than normal, but the 7-day forecast does provide some warmth, especially getting into the weekend. 21 degrees on Saturday, maybe 25 on Monday. Nathan and Michelle.
All right, pretty good. Thank you, Lindsay. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great afternoon.